Alright, so I took a little bit of a break to give my voice some time to rest, and now we are back here talking about the latest in New York trade talk, because we have a deal to announce between the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders. I get it, this video might be a little bit ill-timed because at the time of recording this audio, both the Islanders and the Rangers are playing in their respective games. The Rangers are beating Boston 2-1, the Islanders are beating Philadelphia 2-0. But that does not dissuade us from talking about the update we had been given earlier this morning by one Vince Z. Mercogliano on Twitter. Take a look at what he tweeted out at 10:18 a.m. PST here today. I'm hearing the New York Rangers are on the verge of their first move of the retool. A trade that would send Carson Soucy to the Islanders is brewing. No official announcement yet as they work out the particulars, but expect Soucy to be held out of the lineup tonight for roster management. And that is exactly what happened. The Rangers in their game against the Bruins did not end up playing Carson Soucy, and as of a few minutes ago, we got ourselves an update from Emily Kaplan saying that as Soucy sits out tonight for the Rangers for a roster management, a deal is in place to send him to the Islanders, as Mercogliano reported earlier today. The return is a 2026 third-round pick, per ESPN sources. Now, Carson Soucy heading over to New York to New York, I guess you could say, for a third-round pick is obviously not a super significant move, but what I do find interesting is the fact that the Rangers were actually able to get themselves their own third-round pick back. You see, the Rangers acquired Carson Soucy on March 6, 2025 for a 2025 third. So, they flipped him a year after for a 2026 third. It's no harm, no foul for the Rangers, essentially. A guy like Soucy, who unfortunately had much better days in his NHL career in the past. He's 31 years old, a big guy, left-handed defenseman who plays really solid defensive hockey in certain systems. When you have the right coaching staff, when you have the right guys guiding him to do what he needs to do, Carson Soucy is actually decently effective, and we saw that in his days in Seattle and in his first season with the Vancouver Canucks. 21 points in 64 games is a career high for Soucy in 21-22 with the Kraken, and in 23-24, Soucy played only half the games in the season and he had 6 points. You could say that production is actually not great, but really that 23-24 campaign was so good for Soucy because it was almost like the perfect top 4 shutdown D-man. You didn't need Soucy to produce points because you had Hughes and Hronek going out there and doing that. But his presence in the lineup was so good, so stabilizing, and so calming for the rest of the Canucks, especially under that Rick Tocchet, Adam Foote style, that Carson Soucy was seen as a very good veteran on that blue line. Soucy, Zadorov, Cole, that was the identity that Vancouver had on their defense, and they played very well, all things considered. Soucy also had 5 points in 12 playoff games for the Canucks as they beat the Predators and went to Game 7 against the Oilers. However, the next season, Soucy had 10 points in 59 Vancouver Canucks games, and even though the point production was technically better, Soucy was absolutely terrible last year with the Canucks. He was all over the place, no defensive stability. The Canucks as a whole were not a good team, and Soucy didn't do any heavy lifting to try and rectify that, which I guess is not really what he is paid to do. He's only making $3.25 million a year till the end of this season anyway, so it's not like Soucy is supposed to be a huge game changer. But he was so good in his first year with the Canucks, so replaceable in his second year with Vancouver, that by the time Soucy got traded to New York, a lot of Canucks fans were saying, okay, yeah, great, finally. Thank goodness he's off of the team. He is not a defenseman this team needs anymore, especially when you have all the young guys, Wilander, Mancini, Elias Pettersson, Zeev Buium now trying to make themselves impacts on the lineup. With this season's New York Rangers, Soucy got 8 points in 46 games played, on pace for 13 over a 76-game campaign, and based off of the way a lot of Rangers fans are talking about Soucy, seems like he hasn't necessarily improved too much during his time with the Rangers. You can debate that, hey, New York just sucks too. They're not a great team, so obviously players like JT Miller, like Carson Soucy, maybe even some of the younger guys coming in, like a Brendan Othman, for example, maybe these guys are not going to have the best foot forward in terms of point production and actual on-ice play based off of the results that the team is getting as a whole. That's fair. I will say, though, when it comes to the New York Islanders, this actually might be a perfect stylistic fit for what Carson Soucy does and the kind of player that he is. When I think Islanders defense, I don't think Tony DeAngelo going out there and trying to score points. I think of Alexander Romanov going out there and blocking all these shots. I think of Scott Mayfield and what he's able to do in his own zone, swatting pucks away and eating shot blocks. I think of that overall defensively minded style that New York Islanders D-men are starting to exhibit. And I think that Carson Soucy would be a really good addition to that type of a play style. He fits perfectly almost. You think about what Adam Foote and Rick Tocchet had the Canucks D doing in 2024. Myers, Zadorov, Cole, Soucy doing all the heavy lifting defensively while Hughes and Hronek scored all the points. You could do the same thing with the Islanders, except flip Hughes and Hronek for Matthew Schaefer and Tony DeAngelo. It actually feels pretty profitable when you work it out like that. I do think that there's so much value to what Soucy can bring if he's able to be that defensive stud like he was in the past. He had 2.5, I guess you could say, off years, but really, this is a guy that should be able to provide some very solid middle pair defensive responsibility, and for a third-round pick, I think he could definitely do worse. So I know Rangers fans will definitely harp on Soucy for not being great this season. It's fair to do so, but I would not be surprised if Soucy was able to find his game on the Islanders and be able to actually showcase some of that extra shot blocking, physicality, defensively minded value that he provided Vancouver once upon a time. So with all that in mind, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this trade. As reported by Emily Kaplan, the Rangers and the Islanders have made a deal. It is Soucy over to the Isles. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9 and bye.